Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is another weather forecasting video for January 18th, 2022. Of course, my name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate. It seems that we are starting to get more frequent winter storms as we head towards the latter stages of January, and we actually are starting to see more and more systems that are starting to get their act together here with the water vapor satellite imagery. We have two areas to watch here as the satellite imagery pushes on through, with one storm system being here along the border of the United States and Canada, as well as another developing low pressure system down here in the southwestern portions of the United States as well. These storms are going to potentially bring some snow and potentially ice in some areas, but starting off with the one towards the north along the border of Canada and the United States. This storm is a bit more of your classic Alberta clipper, with it ranging over here from Alberta and pushing all the way in towards the Great Lakes. This will eventually move on through towards portions of Wisconsin, Michigan, as well as the provinces of Ontario and Quebec. But what's really something to watch out for, besides the snow that will come from this original low pressure system, is a new one that will form along the boundary that it will create a little bit further towards the south and west. And that upper level low pressure system will end up moving towards the Ohio River Valley in the mid-Atlantic, pairing with another low pressure system that will form off of the east coast in the Atlantic Ocean. And that could potentially create some risks for winter weather into portions of the east coast. So definitely something that we're going to have to watch on through as to how that actually transpires. And then the other low pressure system that we're going to want to watch out for, as I said, is this developing low that's down here towards portions of the southwestern portions of the United States. You have a big trough that is surging on through just to the south of this into portions of Mexico, and you have another bit of a jet stream dipping right within here along the border of California and the Pacific Ocean. And what this is going to do is these two jet streams are basically going to connect and basically form this bit of an arc, or this dip in the jet stream, and you can already see the counterclockwise spin here within some of the clouds, indicating a developing low pressure system. Now, this wind shear up here along the coastline will basically push this low pressure system a bit further south, and this could potentially create some wintry precipitation over into portions of the deep south. So definitely something to watch out here with that, with the weather models. But before we do get to the models, please be sure to subscribe and turn on channel notifications to stay up to date with all the latest information that I will be providing, especially since most of the stuff that I do upload is about life-threatening weather. So if you want to hear about winter weather, tropical weather like hurricanes, or severe weather like tornadoes, please be sure to tune into the channel, as I will be providing that here. And please be sure to like this video so that we can get this onto YouTube's platform to spread this information to as many people as possible. And finally, please be sure to share this with friends and family and on social media. Taking a look at the current 500 millibar wind shear here with the NAM 12 kilometer model, which is looking about 6 kilometers above ground level, you can actually see the two low pressure systems that I was talking about on this current wind shear map. And as this continues to play on through, you can see how things actually start to fall into line with some steeper wind shear across portions of Ontario, Quebec, and portions of the northeastern United States, with the two new developing low pressure systems, the one that is continuously still developing in the southwestern portions of the United States, and then the other one along the lagging end of the boundary, or the trough, that will eventually move on through further into portions of the Midwest and the Ohio River Valley. Now, past this, there seems to be a lot of model disagreement as to what transpires, but according to the NAM model, you can actually see how this turns into one giant trough. You can see how the low pressure systems kind of just fan out a little bit more, and you see these dips over here in the isobars, indicating that there is a pretty steep trough that is elongating all the way through from the Great Lakes down towards portions of Mexico. And this will eventually create a lot of precipitation along any area along this giant dip in the jet stream. So we're basically going to have to watch out for how low this cold air behind most of these low pressure systems seep down, so that we can determine as to what type of precipitation these areas could potentially get. However, on the contrary, the Euro model actually develops this upper level low pressure system over the Ohio River Valley in the Midwest, and this actually pairs up with another low pressure system that forms off of the coast of the United States and ends up bringing a lot of wintry precipitation across areas here along the Carolinas, specifically along the coast. So we're going to have to see how much, once again, that wintry cold air is going to come in behind these low pressure systems, because depending upon that can determine as to how much snow, freezing rain, or even if this could just potentially be a giant rain event, could actually get out of these areas. If we want to shift over to the North American model again with the simulated radar, you can see how this actually all plays out here from Wednesday into Thursday. And you can see this new band of snow that forms from this elongated jet stream based off of these two low pressure systems that start to fall into place, starts to kind of form. And you can see a lot of elongated precipitation of either snow, freezing rain, sleet, or rain that starts to kind of congeal along an entire line, and that ends up pushing on through into portions of the mid-Atlantic as well as into areas along the Carolinas. And you can see by Thursday night, or at least Thursday afternoon, you can see a band of snow that starts to push on through, but this isn't expected to be all too significant, with some dusting amounts and upwards of a couple of inches. So not really too much for that. But the thing to really watch out for here, at least according to the North American model, is what happens from Friday into Saturday, with the potential for some freezing rain and sleet across some portions of the Carolinas, as well as some areas along down here into portions along the Gulf of Mexico from Texas all the way into Louisiana, and then eventually into portions of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and connecting back up with the Carolinas. Now, how realistic this opinion is from the North American model is kind of up in the air, depending upon how these two low pressure systems interact. If the Euro model is correct, then you can't really assume that there's going to be a whole lot of cold air down here towards portions of Texas, Louisiana, and maybe southern Mississippi and Alabama, to which you could even get the frozen precipitation due to the fact of how warm the Gulf of Mexico is and how constant moisture is going to be streaming into that general vicinity. However, if the NAM model is correct, these two low pressure systems could potentially bring enough cold air behind this boundary and could create some frozen precipitation across much of the area. But the thing that seems to be the most consistent with both of these models is that areas along the Carolinas could potentially get some freezing precipitation once again, whether it is frozen rain, sleet, or snow, and it ends up being a little bit further to the east than it was the last time with the winter storm that was over on Sunday. If we take a look at a comparison between the vorticity at 500 millibars between the GFS and the NAM, with the NAM being on the left and the GFS on the right, you can actually see a ball of vorticity here indicating a low pressure system compared to a giant boundary that is stretching across the United States within this general time frame of Friday afternoon to Friday evening. So the NAM seems to be a bit of an outlier compared to other models like the GFS, the Euro, and the Canadian model. So we're just going to have to see as to how this low pressure system starts to interact and whether or not this upper level low ends up developing as this moves on through. Regardless, along this boundary that pushes on through from Thursday, you can start to see the beginning of the new low pressure system that'll form along this boundary here off of the coast of the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida. And this will start to push on through and just basically congeal with a lot of moisture and bring in a lot of cold air from that upper level low into the general areas here of Southern Virginia, into the Carolinas, and even into portions of Georgia, with the Euro actually saying there will be a lot of freezing rain and sleet once again, but just a little bit further to the east than what mainly got hit, which was Greer, Charlotte, and Raleigh. So just watch out for that as to how this ends up forming, especially with there being a potential low pressure system that'll move up the coast. So definitely something that we're going to have to watch out for with how significant this could potentially be. The main thing here is whether or not there is actually an upper level low pressure system that could bring in all that cold air to begin with within some of these areas. Now, assuming that the Euro is correct, we're going to be taking a look at the 850 millibar moisture levels, which is just basically looking at the relative humidity at 1 kilometer above ground level. Of course, you can see that the areas in green are relatively high humidity and the areas in brown is relatively low humidity. You can see the big boundary that's moving on through here. Of course, the timing is, as usual, above me in Eastern Daylight Time. And you can see from Thursday heading off into Friday, this will start to kind of push on through and combine with a bit of moisture that is off the coast of the portions of the Carolinas and Georgia, as well as Florida. And this could potentially create a big low pressure system that'll move on through. So moisture within this area is without a doubt not a limiting factor here within some of these areas. You can also see how dry air starts to seep in behind, and that is your cold air that is really trying to penetrate throughout much of these areas here of moisture. And depending upon how much dry air actually seeps in behind the system will actually determine as to which areas get snow, freezing rain, and even areas could get rain. So now, since we know that moisture is not a limiting factor in this environment, we're going to be taking a look at the different levels of the atmosphere to determine as to whether or not the snow that forms in the upper portions of the atmosphere turns back into rain or it actually stays into some portion of wintry precipitation. So we're going to be taking a look at the 700 millibar temperature in Celsius, which is about 3 kilometers above ground level. And the areas to really focus is these areas in white and into the greens, and that is areas that are below freezing. So we know that the areas above this black line is below freezing, and this is where snow can actually fall through this environment 3 kilometers above ground level and not melt back into rain. Now, if we shift over to the 850 millibar temperatures, you can see how that line actually recedes a lot further back up north. Let's actually change this to a different color here, and we're actually going to choose blue here for this new line here. So this line up here is now the new freezing layer, and this is at 850 millibars, which is about 1 kilometer above ground level. So anywhere that is in between the blue and the black so far goes from snow, and then it changes back into rain. Now let's change it over towards the surface, and we're going to take a look at the temperature in Celsius to determine as to where that freezing level is there. And you can see how the freezing level actually buckles back into portions of South Carolina and North Carolina, meaning that anyone that is below this blue and above this green could potentially see some freezing rain within this general area. And this is the concern here. Some slippery conditions that could be hazardous for travel, as well as widespread power outages and downed trees, is possible within this general vicinity right within here. So if you live within this general vicinity, you need to really watch out for the potential of that very dangerous freezing rain and potentially even some heavy snow. Now we're going to be taking a look at different model outputs as to how much potential freezing rain could potentially be possible across most of these areas, with the worst by far going towards the Euro model with an upwards of 1.5 inches of freezing rain possible across portions of eastern North Carolina as well as northeastern South Carolina. So definitely something to watch out for over there, but that does not seem to be the case across other models. If we shift focus from the Euro model to the very similarly outputted GFS model, you can see how the freezing rain actually recedes a bit further south into portions of Georgia, much of South Carolina, as well as coastal North Carolina near areas of Wilmington. So it's definitely something that we're going to have to monitor as this continues to get closer and closer to the event. And of course, realistic solutions will be a lot more likely when models actually get closer and closer to the actual winter storm here. But for the most part, it seems that most models will be indicating some form of wintry precipitation will be likely across portions of the mid-Atlantic into the southeast, specifically along portions of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, somewhere, some way. However, on the other hand, if we go from a model like the GFS to the NAM model, which we talked about how that boundary elongates all the way through from portions of Texas all the way up into the northeastern portions of the United States, you can see it paints a very different picture. Seems how that low pressure system then starts to form, and it is anticipated that some freezing rain is possible across portions of the coastline of the Gulf of Mexico from Houston and Corpus Christi all the way through into portions of southern Louisiana into southern Mississippi and Alabama. So it's definitely something to where we're going to have to watch as to how that low pressure then starts to form. And if it does actually do that, then the potential for some of that cold air actually can seep in along that boundary and create some wintry precipitation down into the deep south. Now, as for snow totals from this event, similarly to how it was with the freezing rain, it seems to be all over the place, but for the majority of the models, it seems that there will be some form of snow that will start to form, specifically from Virginia Beach and Norfolk, all the way through a bit further north towards areas like Ocean City and Salisbury, as well as areas a bit further inland along portions of the border of Virginia and North Carolina. So it will have to see as to whether or not that cold air actually comes around with that low pressure system that will move along the coast. But compared that to another model like the GFS, there does seem to be a bit of a trend as to there being some snow across this area compared to looking to another model like the NAM, to which it doesn't even show any sort of precipitation from there all the way up until Saturday. Now, this is likely to change as we get closer and closer with the NAM model, as this only goes to about Saturday morning, as you can see on the time, all the way over on the top portion of me, at least. So this is going to probably change as this gets closer and closer to the event. And as I make more and more videos, as this comes closer and closer into view, you'll probably see how the NAM will kind of agree for the most part with the Euro and the GFS, unless if that low pressure system does not develop along portions of Louisiana and Texas, which means that there will more than likely be more of an output over into portions of the Carolinas. Now, as this progresses from this event here from Friday into Saturday, you can see, as I said, that low pressure system then starts to move on through. Some residual snow is possible across portions of Cape Cod, but then after that, nothing really happens until the beginning of next week, to where you have another Alberta clipper that will begin to move on through from portions of the Midwest and the northern plains, and you can see a new low pressure system that will begin to form across portions of the Gulf of Mexico, to where this could actually potentially create some severe weather across some of the areas along the coastline, especially into some areas along the Florida Peninsula. So we're going to have to watch out for how that moves on through, and we're going to have to watch out for how that Alberta clipper actually moves on through and creates snow across portions of the Midwest into the Ohio River Valley. But other than that, anything past this tends to be a little bit finicky, and the models don't tend to be consistent the further and further away you are from the current date. So that's going to do it for the most part from this video. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, share this with friends and family and on social media. Also follow me on social media, link will be in the description down below. Our Give It To Me Straight question of the day will be, how much snow or ice did you get from this winter event that impacted you this past weekend? And if I see something that is really surprising, then I'll be sure to pin you in the comments down below. But otherwise, I will catch you guys in the next video, whenever that may be later on this week, which most likely will be on Wednesday. So please be sure to turn on notifications to stay up to date with all that I do provide. And I will see you guys next time. Peace out, everyone.